Good morning. Welcome to the Planning and Economic Development Subcommittee. It's October 2nd, 2018. I am calling this meeting to order. I do not have any call to the public. So I have items 1 and 2, minutes from the previous meeting. I had asked last month or 2 weeks ago actually if we could vote on these items since we're a different subcommittee and people are different. We're sitting on it that are different, including I. Um, so we can? Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. A second. All those, and are we doing 1 and 2? Can we do 1 and 2?
Yes.
Okay. So these are for items 1 and 2. Call to the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We are on items 3 through 9. I will pull out 4, so we will be voting on items 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
Chairman Pastor, Councilman Nowakowski would like to pull out item 5 as well.
So we'll pull out item 4 and 5. The motion would be for 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve consent.
There's a motion and there's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 We are now on item number 4. It is the medical marijuana dispensary operating hours. Would you like a presentation or do you?
Because of timing issues, not all of them have heard it. So last month, you'll recall, you provided direction to hit a couple of the other villages. We were able to hit one of those, but not the other 2 because timing didn't work out. We will hit those 2 prior to next month's full council action, the first part of November.
Okay, so is there any way we continue this item until the villages get briefed?
I'm sorry, I was dealing with this. So not all the villages were briefed?
So the last month, the subcommittee provided direction to staff to go to the villages, but because, and I shouldn't say last month, because it's really two weeks ago, so because of timing of the villages, there hasn't been enough time for those villages to meet again. So those villages are coming up later on here in October, so we will go back to them, but we were not able to get on those agendas because of the way the timing worked out from the special subcommittee meeting that happened in September where you gave us that direction.
Okay. So there we are hearing a continuance.
Yes, I'd like to continue that item.
I have one question before we, my question is, in staff opinion, are there any known public safety concerns with the extension of hours of these facilities?
So, Councilwoman or Chairwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, the discussion comments that staff reviewed relative to this issue were really focused on the hours of operation extension. And so when the city adopted our rules that say dispensaries shall close at 7 p.m., there was significant concern that those were going to be areas where there would be easy access to drugs. And so that was why we picked our 7 p.m. time frame. We have not had any reports from the police department about there being concerns about illegal drug dealing operations happening around dispensaries. So we don't believe there's any police concerns at all about extending the hours from 7 to 10 p.m. I don't know enough that I could make a broad statement about all public safety. That's something that you'd have to talk to the respective departments about.
Okay, so from my understanding is that you did research based on my question, And my understanding is that there is no data regarding any type of public safety concerns, in particular with those that are already operating till 10 o'clock. So,
Madam Chair, that's correct. We don't have any police issues that have been reported relative to there being increased concerns about the 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Timeframe. And that goes back to the concerns where the department had regular meetings with Vice because from the police because of concerns about the fact that we didn't know how dispensaries were really going to operate, and we were concerned that they would in fact be an easy target for someone to get illegal drugs. And so that was why we were very cautious with our 7 p.m. time frame and why we had monthly meetings with Vice. But over time, we pulled back from those because the dispensaries did not seem to be having those problems. And that really, I think, is a function a lot of who got involved in the medical marijuana industry, and it became a very expensive industry. And the folks that are participating in that are very cautious about their employees and what they do. And so because they have security plans and those other things that are out there, they're very cautious about it. So we haven't seen some of those initial concerns that we had relative to the police and hours of operation.
okay. And my understanding is that they're heavily regulated. So I think that it's a very timing that it's on the agenda. It's very timing that we're discussing this medical marijuana dispensary. It is, from my understanding and research that I've been doing lately, fast and furious, is that it is a very competitive industry, and you have many different camps in there vying for, I guess, the dispensary. So we will probably continue having this conversation this afternoon. I'm going to put it on the record, May 2nd, 2018. This is a staff report attachment B. Based on numerous reviews of existing nonprofit medical marijuana dispensaries, there are not significant public safety issues or detrimental effects from these establishments, including the ones with extended operating hours. And I just want to put that on the record. If you need page 55 of 61 for the minutes, I have it. So thank you. There is a motion to continuous. There's a second. Roll call.
Real quick.
Okay.
Alan, so the briefing to the, just for clarification, the briefing to the villages focuses on hours, not public safety, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Mendoza, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Another,
Go ahead.
so Alan, we have allocated extending hours to some of the dispensaries that are out there right now, and that this is the way to make it kind of fair, where all the dispensaries don't start coming in saying, well, you allowed one dispensary to go until 10 o'clock. We should all be at 10 o'clock.
Madam Chair, Councilman Nowakowski, that is correct. We do have, I think, 7 of them that have received variances to allow them to stay open until 10 p.m. Then the rest are shut off at 7 p.m.
And Madam Chair, the only reason that I know that is because we have a large number of dispensaries in District 7, and some of them are already approaching us saying that we allowed others to go until 10. We should all be at until 10.
It's about being equitable and being fair.
That is
My
certainly what,
understanding.
Madam Chair, Councilman Nowakowski, that is certainly what some in the industry are focusing in on, yes.
Yeah. So, and I think if Councilwoman Mendoza, the question was about public safety. The report on May 2nd, medical marijuana operating hours, the zoning ordinance text amendment, that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th paragraph speaks about that. And that's where it states there are not significant public safety issues or detrimental effects on these establishments. So,
Madam Chair, if I could clarify for the record, when staff wrote this, I think staff used public safety, but the reality is we were just focusing on the hours of operation and police issues relative to that initial concern, which was why we chose the 7 p.m. Closing time, was looking at modeling that more after a Walgreens and a typical pharmacy, of why we had the 7 p.m. closing time relative to there not being concerns really about police. We didn't analyze any fire data in that. It was police, information that we were getting from Vice about any concerns they were having relative to these facilities for their
Okay.
hours of operation.
Thank you for the clarity. I have one card in favor not to speak, and I will put this in the record. It's Sarah Pressler? Yeah, right here. Okay, so you want to speak, or do you want to speak? Because it's marked in favor, but no, not.
I'd like to speak if I can.
Okay.
I thought it might just be on the consent agenda, so
To the continuance. We're now continuing it.
so it's to speak to the continuance.
Okay, thank you. We're October, so November, the first week in November, we'll hear it again.
Correct, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 5, CDBG Neighborhood Commercial Rehab and Operational Patch and Paint Program Project. Councilman Nowakowski, you want a presentation or you have questions?
No, just some questions
Okay.
really quick. So this is a community development block grant program. So how do you qualify to actually receive funding for? Is there so what's the qualifications for it?
Madam Chair and Councilman Nowakowski, this particular program is an open application process. They have to meet the criteria that is required by CDBG, and we do have the type of exterior improvements, the cost, and then the owner has to be willing to subordinate in some instances.
In general, the three key criteria are that the business is located in a low-income area and provides goods or services to the residents of that area. The business agrees to create permanent full-time jobs for low-income residents of the area, or the building is in a designated slum or blighted area, or if outside target areas, the improvements are limited to specific conditions of the physical decay and are detrimental to public health and safety.
So what is the average income of that area?
That's a good question. I do not have that at my disposal. However, sorry, we can get that for you.
If I may, it's 80% low to mod, so it's 80% of the area median income.
So 80% of that area is under lower income?
If meeting the low and moderate income area criteria, yes. But otherwise, if a business is willing to provide jobs or create jobs, especially for low and moderate income residents, that also meets the criteria.
And then basically it's $100,000 that will be forgiven after 10 years, right?
Right. It is a forgivable loan, and it's up to $100,000. I don't know if we'll necessarily spend that much on this project.
And is there, does this business have other businesses outside the city of Phoenix and other low-income blighted areas?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Councilman Nowakowski, we do not have that information at this point, but we certainly could get that for you.
All right.
Are you, got all your answers?
I got all my answers.
Okay, you want to make a motion?
No, I think right now, because the questions weren't answered, and I
What
have
would you like
questions
to
on
do?
it, I mean, I would like to get a little bit more answers.
Would you like to continue it?
I would love to continue.
Okay. Can you make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to continue this item
I will
till
second.
November, what is it?
November 6th, I guess. I will
Thank you.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 10 is for information only. Does anybody need any information on key Phoenix economic indicators, quarterly reports? No? Okay.
Looks good.
We are on item 11, 2019-2020 CDBG Public Services and Public Facilities RFP. I will have a presentation, and then after that, I have a card. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Planning and Economic Development Subcommittee. My name is Spencer Self, and I'm the Acting Director of the Neighborhood Services Department. And I'm joined today by Christy Blake, the Management Assistant 2, who will be running the request for proposal process that we'll be discussing today, and Jessica Gonzalez, the Administrator of our Community Development Block Grant Program. Today we are discussing the 2019-2020 CDBG Public Service and Public Facility RFP process. HUD allows for a maximum of 15% of our total CDBG allocation to be used for public services. A portion of these funds are competitively bid to nonprofits that provide services that the city does not generally provide. Next year will be the last year of our current 5-year consolidated plan, and with limited funds remaining, we're recommending to continue using the same priority areas we used in previous years, which consistently are areas of the highest identified need from the residents when we do our public outreach processes. Additionally, we're proposing level funding for non-city public facility improvements, which are also competitively bid through this process. As nonprofits have expressed how difficult raising funds can be for facility improvements. In general, we seek projects that will allow for additional or enhanced services, and eligible facilities can include senior and youth centers, domestic violence shelters, neighborhood facilities, child care buildings, and more. This RFP runs parallel to our annual action plan process, beginning with the RFP process approval, which is what we're here for today. Once the RFP is issued in late October, interested nonprofits will work diligently to provide their best proposals, which they will submit by early December. In January through March, the mayor-appointed Community Development Review Committee will meet regularly to evaluate the proposals, including hearing presentations from the most competitive submissions, before we bring the results back to council in the spring for final approval. With that, we ask the subcommittee recommend approval of the proposed RFP process and priority areas, and we'll be happy to answer any further questions you may have.
Questions? Councilwoman Mendoza.
If the public wants to submit comments, where do they go to? Where could they find a link?
Sure, absolutely. There's multiple ways that the public can participate in our annual action plan process. We will be holding several public outreach meetings throughout the year, including one in October, which we have not yet finalized the date on, so unfortunately I can't give that today. In addition, if anyone wants to call us at 602-534-4444, our staff will take down any comments or any recommendations or any discussions of the need that the community may have for these CDBG funds. In addition, we do have an email or mailbox at grants.nsd@phoenix.gov.
Awesome, thank you.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Madam Chair, I'd like to, if you can actually email us those dates so we can pass them out to those organizations within our own districts that might be able to qualify for some of these grants. That'd
Absolutely.
be great. Pass that word out. Thank you.
My understanding is, what is the total allocation for this?
Sure. So for next year, what we're proposing is approximately $240,000 for our public services and $428,000 for the public facility side. Now, keep in mind that this is based on an assumption of level funding for our CDBG program. We will not find out how much funding we will receive until sometime in the spring. And what we've done in the past is if we receive an increase in our total CDBG allocation, we've adjusted upward the amount that we've proposed. Of course, the alternate could also happen if we see a decrease in CDBG funding. That could impact our ability to provide that $240,000 for public service, especially.
Okay. And this is for low-income youth services, support services for people with disability, and senior support services.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe when I sat, I'm not sure what committee, I think domestic violence or veteran services was also on here.
That's true. 2 years ago, we included 2 new priority areas. One was human trafficking or domestic violence, which we have which we allocated 150,000 to, and we entered into a contract at Phoenix Starfish Place with those funds, and that's a 5-year contract. So we are continuing to fund that item. We've just removed it from this this competitive proposal process because it's being used for something so specific. Additionally, we've also provided funding in the past to address food deserts, which was also that same year 2 years ago. However, due to the decreased funding that we've had on an ongoing basis, we're not recommending continuing with those categories. It is a very small pool of funds for a lot of need out there.
So if I think I heard correctly, so please correct me if I'm wrong, food deserts, which I think probably majority of our council right here has food deserts, a decision was made by whom?
Ultimately, that decision rests with the council. We brought the items forward to at the time, the SHEN Subcommittee, Sustainability, Housing, Efficiency, and Neighborhoods. And we did not recommend continuing that area. Food deserts is a complex issue, no doubt, and it's a difficult one to fund with such a small amount of funding. The maximum amount of funding for any individual project within the public service cap is $30,000. It's very difficult to get something going in 1 year with that limited funding. But it's certainly something that we could continue to provide. I think we had some interest from urban gardens, and education was a big component of what we saw an interest in, and that's something that certainly can be provided.
So I could ask for it to come back.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Is there a motion? I lost
Yeah,
track.
absolutely.
But I'll make a motion, so.
Do we need a motion? We don't
Chairwoman
need a motion. It's
Pastor, if
information.
I could just clarify, if you are at this time asking that that be included, now would be the time to include that category unless you're looking into next year, because what they're coming before you today is, here's the 3 specific categories that we want to put out to public comment.
And keep in mind that public services is a very broad category. It's one of the most sought after for community development block grant funds, which is part of why HUD caps it at 15% of our total allocation, because CDBG in general is meant to be above ground, the built environment. And so most of our funds have to do with building housing or rehab for owner-occupied or rental properties, code enforcement, those types of elements.
Okay, so you're asking if we put it in? Do you guys want to have a discussion about this? Do we want to throw it in, or do we want to have a discussion next time and throw it in next year? Okay, all right. So, and I also looked at 240,000. It just hit me because it was 2 years ago. I believe when I sat on that committee, we increased the amount. I think my first or second year that I sat on that committee, and I think it was 400,000. What was the amount?
Isn't it 400? I know that 2 years ago it was at 620,000.
Okay.
And that year we pulled out the 150,000 specifically for the human trafficking and domestic violence. And then last year we also increased we used some of these funds for specific targeted areas such as outreach and services for homeless. We carved out 325,000 for that specifically. And then we also pulled out 125,000 for services at Aeroterra. If you're doing the math, and I can see you're doing the math, that leaves us with only 20,000. We did increase the amount as well last year, an additional 220,000, because we did receive a substantial, relatively increase in community development block grant funds. So our cap increased, and so the 220,000 plus the 20,000 that was remaining, doing the math, is how we get to the 240,000 that we're at today.
Okay, so then the 600 basically you siphoned it off. I will say siphoned. I don't know what other term is. At this moment, I can't move. My brain's moving quickly. So you basically went from 620 and then started to pick projects that you guys wanted to concentrate on.
The council voted to
Right,
concentrate on, absolutely.
as we gave you a directive, or those that sat on the committee gave a directive.
And also, just to note, our public facility increased in the dollar amount. So we had 328,000, I believe, last year at the beginning of the year. And this year we're recommending 428, again, because our total allocation of CDBG funds increased.
Got it. I'd like to call to the mic is Sean Pierce.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chair and subcommittee members. On this item, my opposition, I'm the Vice President of Contract Administration for the Area Agency on Aging, and we work with seniors, the most vulnerable in our community, helping to keep them in their homes for a longer period of time, which is actually less expensive than putting them into care facilities. We always provide those through our partnerships, those supportive services. My concern is that as you've heard, over the years, these funds, which are already minute and have also been allocated to various causes, and senior services unfortunately have gone down to about 1.5% of the total allocation. Last year, one organization received funding under senior services, and that was CPLC and their Healthy Aging program. And the previous years, at least 3 programs were funded. And I think it would be amiss for us not to advocate for more services and for more funding to senior services. In the next 12 years, 20%, at least 20% of our population will be over 65. We have an opportunity now to start serving people, to start getting things going without these partnerships, without these organizations having that available funding. I think we'll be having a loss in these communities because a lot of these nonprofits, while it's not a large sum of money, it provides that additional support for the populations that we're talking about. So we ask that you revisit this, that you ask staff to really look at the impact of some of these programs that we've funded over the past few years, and that we look to fund senior services more robustly than we have in the past couple of years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sean. Any comments? I would like an analysis on this, on how we determine 1.5%. I actually believe or agree with Sean in the sense that our baby boomer population is aging or maturing, and it's one of our largest populations. And then you come to our group, and then you have a huge gap that ends up into being the millennials of the young 18-year-olds or those maturing. So that's my timer. So I would like to analysis regarding the funding and everything, and if we have to increase it, to look to see how we increase it so that those vulnerable populations, as they are, have at least a safe place or have the necessities needed as they age. So those are my comments. I thought it was because it says senior. It says senior support services.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I'll note is of our 3 categories that remain, that's not as highly desired, both when we go out to the public and when we provide the RFP. The responses dictate kind of how much funding goes to each area. And that's not necessarily, or it hasn't historically been one of the highest areas, but obviously it's within our 3 categories, and certainly the nonprofits who provide services, and you can see the changing demographics of the city. It's a key area.
So Sean, I highly recommend that you follow this and apply, because you just heard the answer, which I find hard to believe, but you just heard it. So you may be one of the lucky ones that may receive the funding. So I believe this is no, we have to vote. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the 2020 Public Service and Public Facility Request for Proposals.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we are now on item 12, Downtown Code Map Text Amendment. So, Alan, I'm going to ask you a question before you get started. Can you please explain text amendment and then the zoning? Because I got questions about that.
Certainly, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. So this item is a text amendment to the downtown code. When the city adopted the downtown code, one of the primary motivating factors with that was to remove this issue about rezoning different properties. And so we went through a process where we established the height via a height regulating map that is text embedded within the downtown code. And so anytime someone wants to amend the height now, it is within the downtown code, it is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, not a rezoning case. In a rezoning case, what the council is actually doing is changing the zoning on that property from one district to another district, and it's property specific. In the case of a text amendment, it is changing a height classification that in this particular instance only applies to this one parcel. So it's different in terms of process, but there are some similarities to a rezoning case. And as such, I would recommend that, particularly in dealing with today's hearing, that the subcommittee allow this to be a little bit different than other text amendments, where traditionally a text amendment is just staff, providing here's what the proposed text change is, and then there's some support and opposition. In this case, there is an applicant that has filed the text amendment. And so maybe giving the applicant 5 minutes to make a presentation, kind of like
Well,
you do a zoning case.
I have his PowerPoint from the applicant.
And then on the other side, one of the main speakers on behalf of the neighborhood is Andy Abkarian, and giving her the additional 5 minutes, and then maybe limiting the other speakers to 2 minutes each, because you do have some both for and against. That way it's a little bit more like a zoning case than our traditional text amendment, but it still kind of keeps things moving forward.
I think we have plenty of time to hear everything.
Okay.
Thank you for the recommendation, though. We'll see how it moves.
Sure.
You're on.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, this is a text amendment to the downtown code. The star is the parcel under question right here, where you see by way of reference. This is directly adjacent to Central Avenue, and up to the northern boundary is McDowell Road. So you can see there's a transit stop right here. It's right across the street from Burton Bar Library. There is other height in the area, although nothing built up to the maximum of the zoning districts that you see would be permitted in this area. This particular map shows you what the allowed zoning is today. So you see 75 feet for the parcel to the south and the subject site, and you see 250 feet around it on the other side of Central Avenue, and both north and further to the south. But then you also see 40 feet for the Roosevelt neighborhood behind that to the west. The applicant's proposal would be a 40-foot building height setback within 100 feet from the property line, and then 150 feet over from that west property line, you would go up to 180 feet. And there is a additional open space area that is directly to the parcel to the south, and it's their drainage area that goes to the north. So there's another 20 feet area there that is open space in addition to those numbers that we talked about, which is really just the property line, because that's what the city controls today as part of this zoning case. So this is a height step back provision that would get them up to a maximum height of 180 feet up along Central Avenue. It is supported within the downtown code, next to the light rail station, does help support the goal of creating a vibrant downtown. It is our Central Avenue corridor, and you saw from the permitted heights, there are significant heights that are permitted in that area, although that's not really what has developed in this corridor to date. The Central City Village Planning Committee voted to deny this request 13-3. The Planning Commission did vote to approve it by a 4-1 vote. Staff does recommend approval as recommended by the Planning Commission, and with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Do we want to go to cards?
Go to cards.
Okay. Heather Dukes, Lazarus, Celia, and Bangs. I believe you have a presentation. Okay.
Good morning,
5 minutes?
Councilwoman. Yes, and I'm
Okay.
going to try to
Okay.
fly. Good morning. My name is Heather Dukes. I'm an attorney with Lazarus, Sylvan and Bangs. We are located at 420 West Roosevelt Street. I am here today representing the property owner and applicant Maydot Ventures LLC. The property is located at 1402 North Central Avenue. I'm not going to describe the request because Alan's already gone through most of that, but I want to briefly introduce our team. I have with me today Alvaro Sande, and he is currently a development principal with UEB Builders. He served as the treasurer of the Phoenix Center for the Arts. He's the treasurer of the Evans Churchill Community Association. He's on the board of the Hance Park Conservancy, and he was also involved in the development of the Enhanced Park condominiums located near 2nd Street in Portland. I also have with me here attorney Larry Lazarus from our firm. We have several people in support of this application here today, a few of which have had to leave, but we do have comment cards in support. This aerial photograph shows the unique setting of the property at Central and McDowell. The yellow circle denotes the light rail. You can see the BMO high-rise just to the north on the north side of the slide, with the Willow Historic neighborhood to the west, and then also the Roosevelt Historic neighborhood to the west. This slide shows some of the unique aspects of the property setting, which would support a high-rise development while minimizing negative impacts to the Roosevelt neighborhood. First, the configuration of the Artisan Lofts parcel, depicted with an orange overlay, is similar to a flag-shaped lot, and this is a 50-foot non-developable area that consists of a drainage area for the Artisan Lofts as well as an alley. You also have the Willetta Street cul-de-sac, and so there's no vehicular access between the Roosevelt neighborhood and the property, minimizing traffic concerns for the neighborhood. I want to go briefly through the timeline of this case. And from 1981 to 2001, that's a period of 20 years, this property and several surrounding properties along Central Avenue were zoned C2 high-rise incentive district, which allowed up to 250-foot building heights to be constructed with a rear setback of only 35 feet. Then in January 2001, the former owner of both the Artisan Lofts and the subject property obtained a rezoning approval, essentially downzoning the property to the urban residential district, which decreased the building height. Then in 2003, the phase 1 of the Artisan Lofts project was built, and by 2008, the recession had started, which left this property vacant. Also in December of 2008, the light rail station was constructed at McDowell Road. And in 2010, the City Council adopted the Downtown Code, which then designated the property at 75 feet in height. Now, you may hear from some individuals today stating that the downzoning that occurred in 2001 was in agreement with the neighbors. But when you look at this timeline and all of the changes that have occurred in downtown, particularly along Central Avenue, you can see that there has been a fundamental change in circumstances over the last 17 years, which caused the prior owner to abandon the Phase 2 development. And while the recession was an unintended circumstances of many factors, all of the exciting changes to our downtown after the recession have been intentional. I want to go through a few slides from the Economic Development Department that talk about this intentional movement by the City of Phoenix to create growth and focus since the recession. So again, Phoenix is hot, and the City of Phoenix, one of the key reasons why Phoenix is growing exponentially is that our wages are ranked #1 among 25 metros when considering the rate of increase. The City of Phoenix has also created areas of focus to drive our economy forward, and one is a vibrant 24/7 central city. The city has also supported diversity in downtown employment. Technology growth in Phoenix has been a large contributor to the demand of office space and living options in close proximity to mass transit systems. Phoenix has seen a 318% increase in central city technology companies and is now ranked #3 for high-tech job growth, #4 for the best metro for young professionals, and #11 in terms of leading the tech market. And when you look at this map, you can see the key businesses that are located in close proximity to our light rail station. I would say that the intentional decision-making of our voters, the intentional decision-making by you as our elected officials, and the intentional hard work of the Economic Development Department and the Planning Department is paying off. When you hear about a 2001 agreement that was ultimately abandoned by the prior owner due to a fundamental change in circumstances over the last 17 years, please keep in mind the substantial investment of time, money, and resources made by our city, by our business community, and the choices made by our voters to make our downtown and Central Avenue a vibrant high-rise corridor. So I'm going to skip this part because this, again, we're in the downtown Gateway character area, and its intent is to be a high-density, vibrant corridor designed for transit riders, which, again, this application supports. This is the building height map that Alan Stevenson had talked about, and right now it shows a building height of 75 feet, but then again it's surrounded by a 250-foot height entitlement for Spaghetti Factory, 500 feet across the street, and then 250 to the south. This is the view at 75 feet from our property looking into the Roosevelt neighborhood, and you can see that there's already substantial views into the neighborhood at this existing height entitlement. This is the view at 250 feet from the Spaghetti Factory parcel. So again, this is the existing height entitlement looking down into the neighborhood. Originally, we came up with a step-back criteria. I'm not going to go in that because I'm trying to speed through this, but this was our proposal at the June 11th Village Planning Committee meeting. The green dotted line is the existing 75-foot building height entitlement. We've proposed to reduce that building height up against the Roosevelt neighborhood to be compatible. Once you go 100 feet to the east, then the building height would then start to stair step up towards Central Avenue. So you would have 150-foot building heights and then 200 and 250 along Central Avenue. This is the sight line showing the imposition of that 75-foot building height entitlement. The existing 75-foot building height entitlement would actually block the views of those higher buildings as you approach Central Avenue. Once we met with the neighbors and then we went through the Central Village Planning Committee process, we talked with our client, we talked with the neighbors, and we decided to bring down the height along Central Avenue to make it more compatible. So we took out the 200, we took out the 250-foot heights, we dropped it down to 180, which is essentially a 30% decrease in the building height. And 180 is the lowest that we can go if we plan to build quality concrete construction. So this is a side view, and you can see the comparison between our first proposal and then the proposal that's before you today. You can see it's a substantial reduction in height. This is a comparable development. It's Portland on the Park. It shows the unique step-back design that we're going for. It also is 175 feet in height, which is very comparable to our 180-foot proposal. The 180 feet is also consistent with this transit-oriented development strategic policy framework that was adopted in 2016. The McDowell Road light rail station is marked as a major urban center, and as a major urban center, it's a regional destination point with high regional accessibility, and it calls for medium-high intensity with up to 15 stories and building height with incentives. 15 stories calculates to 180 feet, which is consistent with our proposal. Okay, we also conform to the general plan. On page 68, the general plan and the voters wanted to encourage high-density housing and high-intensity employment uses to locate adjacent or close to transit stations. And they also wanted to continue the development of Central Avenue as the city's transit spine and the principal street of Phoenix, concentrating the maximum intensity of commercial office and retail uses downtown. That's what this proposal is attempting to do. We're using that location along Central Avenue to concentrate the maximum intensity along Central Avenue while at the same time creating compatibility and transitional scale into the single-family neighborhood to the west. This property is located in the Infill Development District, shown by the yellow star in the map. There's also a map in the general plan that's titled the Phoenix Historic Residential District Map, and the historic districts are in blue. And the red dots on the screen are the locations of some of our high-rises that are right up against these historic neighborhoods, creating and establishing this compatibility between the two uses. There is a precedence for high-rise development being compatible next to these historic neighborhoods. We've had several meetings with neighborhood groups, neighborhood leaders, and city staff. Again, we've had a recommendation of approval from the Planning and Development staff, and we've also received a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission at the Central City. We did receive a recommendation of denial, and we are before the City Council on November 7th. So I'm going to go through 6 reasons just to summarize why this text amendment should be supported. It encourages heightened intensity and high-density, vibrant Central Avenue corridor and serves as the city's transit spine and the principal street of Phoenix. The text amendment supports transit ridership and pedestrian activity. It also maximizes multi-use development of vacant infill parcels along the light rail system. I want to emphasize that this vacant parcel is a finite resource for the city. We do not have very many vacant parcels left along the light rail. This text amendment is also consistent with the existing high-rise entitlements along Central Avenue. One of the things you may hear today is that this is a speculative development, when actually, if you look at this building height map, what could have been speculative was the building height entitlements that were given to the spaghetti factory to the north and then also the church to the south. Those are both slated for 250-foot height entitlements. What we have attempted to do is to use the colors on the map to institute greater controls so that we're not just giving a 250-foot blanket height entitlement. We're using this step-back design to control the future development. And again, that step-back design maximizes compatibility with the Roosevelt neighborhood. So the text amendment is consistent with both the high-rise entitlements enjoyed by this property for over 20 years, and then the city's taxpayers and the city they both have made substantial investment in the light rail system, and that's what this text amendment is aiming to support. So with that, I would take any questions, and thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Are there any questions? Okay. I have some white cards, so my question is, it says not to speak, available to speak. So those that are available to speak, if you want to speak, you can come to the mic. Alvaro Sande? Do you want to speak on this? Because I'm going to quickly move this meeting. So if you want to speak, it's now. Okay. I'm going to get this wrong. I want to say Q. Yeah. But I was like, okay, and let me make sure that I'm phonetically doing it. Q, you want to speak? Okay. And he's in favor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As indicated, my name's Q Utsunomiya. I am co-owner of Conceptually Social, and we are a restaurant and catering company that's located on Roosevelt Row, right at 214 East Roosevelt, right next to and inside the Mount Orchid Gallery, as well as properties and concepts that we have in the warehouse district, right on 515 East Grant, and as well an operation on the other side of 7th Street, 917 East Jackson. And all of our concepts and all of our businesses really correlate its support and its strength from our positioning on Roosevelt. And I will say, when Troy Watkins and myself, we began our company, we started the company almost 5 years ago when we committed to lease some empty spaces with Wayne Rainey at the Mount Orchid. And we grew a company from 5 employees, 2 of which are myself and Troy, to a company that's now about 150 employees. We're exceptionally proud of that opportunity, and specific to our timing with the growth and the vibrant nature of what's happening downtown. When we were given the insight to downtown, to the nature of Troy and I, and most of the projects we've ever done has been in Scottsdale or Arcadia, but we were convinced easily by what was coming downtown, and we took a great deal of chance in the beginning to start a company with very little money, and took that chance in regards to what was coming down, both from the growth and what we were seeing as change. And change can be sometimes a hard thing to always accept, but the change in itself was one to the betterment of the city in general. And when we saw the growth, we saw the excitement, they were asking us to commit restaurants, commit coffee shops, commit jobs. And we were very willing to do so with the understanding that more people were going to be coming. We still don't have the opportunity to always maximize guest experience from outside the city. So, i.e. Scottsdale, outlying neighborhoods don't necessarily support us to keep the lights on. It is the downtown and specific, the density downtown that not only allows us our ability to do sales, to be successful, to grow, but also to pay our employees. Troy and I now have a responsibility not only to our families, but to the 100+ people that work for us full time. So nothing that I've ever seen so far downtown. I can't say that I've been down here 25 years. I have lived in Phoenix now for 34. I love downtown. I've put all my life and all my money and all my business aspect downtown with Troy. We believe in it, and we're fortunate to be there with a great community and great neighbors. We've seen anybody that commits to living downtown usually works downtown. Thus, our excitement when there's another project with a developer that we have a relationship with, that we believe in, that looks at all aspects of responsibility, and we have the utmost faith that this project is one that really approaches what is important to our company. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no timer. That's been one of my challenges right now. And so what I will do from here on out, have 2 minutes, and if somebody can help me follow. Brian Garton? You're fine? You're in support. Okay. Troy Watkins? You're in support. You're okay? Brian Vance? In support. You want to speak? No? You're okay. Perfect. Larry Lazarus? You want to speak? Don't speak? Okay. Perfect. Ben? No, I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it that way, Larry. Sorry. I'm just moving the meeting along. Ben Cheney? You want to speak? Nope. You're in favor. Okay. Alex Kaminsky? In support. Okay. All right. I got that out of the way. Now I'm going to go to... No. Is it in yellow? Okay. Hold on. You're in... Louise, please speak. I had you in the wrong pile.
Madam Chair and Council, my name is Louise Roman, and I reside at 1 East Lexington Avenue in Phoenix, a 200-foot high-rise repurposed office building that's now a condo tower. Since 2000, federal and local funds have invested over $1.4 billion in mass transit, the bulk of that money going into our light rail corridor that runs directly in front of the MedOut Venture LLC property. I urge you to support this investment so that I and my fellow citizens can be assured that we are getting a return on that investment. With all due respect to neighbors and friends in the historic overlay district to the west of MedOut property, we need to remember that this was indeed an early private streetcar spurred suburban development. With the setbacks and step-down scheme that MedOut is proposing, those neighbors have been heard. Indeed, a convergence of developer caution and economic conditions in the and community will brought us to the stick frame 75-foot height artisan lofts that now cloud the full potential of the MedOut site. And as you well know, the spaghetti factory, as has been pointed out, continues to be zoned for 250-foot allowance and will not have to appear before you should the property owners wish to develop to that height. In closing, we cannot build a city on stick frame 4/1 in the heart of our city on the light rail corridor. Such projects regrettably proliferate on the light rail. They will not bring us the density to further support the private and public investments and amenities that demonstrate urban vibrancy and livability. Approval of this amendment takes the right direction for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start with the yellow cards, and Bill Shield is first. You're a yellow. You're
Thanks,
a yellow. Would you like to
Madam
speak?
Chair, council members,
Okay.
Councilwoman Mendoza, welcome to your role and congratulations in your new role. I am going to introduce a number of folks from the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association who will be speaking after me. I just want to cover some of the key points, and others will provide more details. But it's important to remember that the Roosevelt neighborhood is a pro-development neighborhood. Over half of the downtown residential high-rises in downtown Phoenix are in the Roosevelt neighborhood. We've welcomed many of them. So we are not NIMBYs. We do believe in density. We do believe in development. But we also believe in the downtown code, which we all worked on, and the city spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop. And the downtown code was intended as a permanent guiding document, not one subject to change whenever a property gets sold. There are, the height map has a number of inconsistencies. If this is approved, you will see zoning attorneys shopping that map, looking for inconsistencies that they can then come in to rezone. We know, in fact, there will be historic properties at risk because they have height that is lower than the prevailing height. Property owners will allow those buildings to be demolished and then assume they can get height rezonings just like this one if this is approved. The 75 height limitation that is currently on the property has already been negotiated. And we gave up density. We wanted density. So when we talk about needing density on the light rail, that was part of the discussion back in 2002, 2003. We asked for more density. In return, we got lower height. The current owner purchased the property knowing that 75-foot height limitation was in place. We have no actual development proposal on this site. We don't know if this is residential or commercial. We at least ought to know what the owner is proposing. And the city council should reject this speculative spot zoning request and leave the downtown code height limit of 75 feet in place. Thank you. I'm going to introduce Cindy Eck. Oh, I'm sorry if you have any questions.
I have one question.
Okay.
Do you guys have a 5-minute presentation, or is going to speak for 5 minutes? Okay, so then I'll just keep it flowing.
If Andy's going to be, who is the president of our association, will be wrapping up, and if she needs to go over 2 minutes, she would use the 5 minutes at that point.
Okay, so
Does that
Andy is last. Okay.
Yep.
My question is, I want, before you guys move on, because I thought I had finished, but Marcia Karasek has put in favor, and can I let her, I'm going to end with you guys. So
Sure.
she walked in late, and we are, go ahead, Marcia. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for hearing this case. I'm a neighbor, a resident of the community, a great appreciator of the historic neighborhoods, and also an appreciator of the walkable urban code that was a great advance for the city of Phoenix and for downtown. And I am very much in support of having more residential density, especially in that central corridor. It will contribute to the 3rd Street Promenade. It will contribute to walkability. It's right near Hance Park. There are so many things in favor of having a 180-foot high-rise building of some kind there, and we hope it would be a residential building, that I can't say enough how much in alignment this kind of zoning would be with the rest of Central Avenue and all of the height that's been allowed. And for this to shrink back down is a disservice to the neighborhood because of the need for more on-street commercial, all of those small places that are looking for tenants for more vibrant retail opportunities at the street level all depend on having density and residential units in this part of Central Phoenix. So to me, I was surprised that there was an issue with this because that has always been the plan for Central Avenue, that it was a tall line of towers. And so this seems very much in alignment with that. You could argue or quibble with that as the plan in general, but that is what we have on Central Avenue, and this would go very well with that. So as an advocate for more feet on the street and to be in alignment with the very strong statements the City Council and council people have made about wanting a vibrant urban core, this project potential is a very positive contributor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now let me get back. Your name?
My name is Cindy.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Eck, and I live at 26 West Willetta. My property is actually directly to the west of this vacant lot. If it weren't for the retention area, we would share a wall. I represent the neighbors that live within 150 feet of the vacant property, and just for information's sake, we do have and have obtained signatures from pretty much 90% of the neighbors that surround this property, that immediately surround this property, who are in opposition to it. That includes Artisan Lofts, that includes 4 historic homes, that includes the old spaghetti factory, and we do not have a signature from thank you, Bluefin. And I don't think they were interested in signing at all. So what makes this unique at this section of Central unique, I mean, we have the Phoenix Art Museum at one end and the park and Burton Bar all along here. What also makes it unique in this aspect is our historic neighborhood is extremely close to this property, and it is only one of 2 places where residential houses and historic residential houses are this close to a proposed high-rise property. One is in Willow on Vernon and us. What I want to tell you is that a lot of my research has pointed to the idea that the 75-foot height on this property was set as a part of a greater plan with intent, not random, to enhance a vibrant neighborhood. 75 feet is appropriate for this property in order to transition into and enhance the flow from the existing historic neighborhood. I think that with the light rail and that it is central, but it is a historic neighborhood, you can't look at each one of those as mutually exclusive. You have to look at all of them together to make this decision. In order to uphold the standards and best practices of good urban design, I would urge you to take a stand against allowing the text amendment change to the downtown code for single properties. What we are all interested in is fine-grained development that leads to a vibrant downtown. This is marked by varied architectures. So for healthy cities, have a diverse mix of old and new buildings and varied architecture. And this gives us varied architecture as was designed by the downtown code.
Thank you, Cindy. I have next Randy. That's next, okay.
Good morning. My name is Randy Eck, and I also reside at 26 West Willetta with my wife. When we look at what's happening here with this text amendment, it is basically allowing the downtown code to be piecemealed out and go back 20 plus years to where each little individual property had a different height, and it changes everything. At this point, if it's approved, the text amendment is approved, you are now setting a precedent that will allow any and all other developers that are here in support to be able to come in and change the height immediately whenever they feel like they need to have more height. The developer, and actually I'm going to call him owner, the owner bought the property knowing that they had a 75-foot height. I bought my property knowing that I had a 40-foot height. I shouldn't be able to come in and go, okay, now I want to build a 5-story building on my lot in Roosevelt, but now because they've got a 75-foot structure, I should be able to build 60 feet on my structure, on my property in Roosevelt, because you're now setting the precedent that that's allowed. We can just come in and ask for it, and we get it. So I think that's setting the wrong precedent. The other thing is there's talk about density. When you look at the 75-foot height, when you look at the Artisan Loft 1, it's got 42 units. When you look at what is planned in the original plan 10 years ago when they were doing Artisan Lofts 2, it's actually 82 units. So there is density even at the 75 feet. So there is more density on that lot and what's allowed. And they use that against us in the petition for 3/4 vote. So they do have density already set with that. So it's not that you're not going to have density. The one other thing I'd want to point out, when you look at the properties, if you go up Central Avenue, where Willow is, all of the properties, they actually demolished all the houses within the first street back to our First Avenue. And that gave the extra density or the extra length between Phoenix, or between the high-rise and the houses. So I just recommend that you not approve this text amendment. You're setting a precedent that just doesn't work.
Thank you, Randy. Katrina Keller?
Hi, Madam Chairwoman, Subcommittee members. My name is Katrina Kaler, and I am a resident at 200 West Portland, Portland on the Park condominium project, the 15-story tower that is greatly recessed from Central Avenue that is used as an example in the case for this project. I am opposed, and I'd like to provide a little context for my own opposition and as member of the Roosevelt Action Association Board. I have been in downtown since 2003. I own a historic property at 4th Avenue and Fillmore, directly across the street from the West Fillmore development that you are all very well familiar with. I welcome density and height to pierce the sky in that area. We welcome this as a neighborhood. We are not against height, we are not against density, and we are not against change in circumstances. What I will point out very specifically is that the change in circumstances over the past 10, 20, 30 years has been the development of the downtown area. And the first group to be a proponent of that change is the group of residents in the historic Roosevelt neighborhood. That, in terms of a course of time, the neighborhood actually predates most of the change that people are speaking to today. And in fact, it is the residents that actually encouraged, promoted, and ushered in this change in circumstances. So the voices you are hearing from today are knowledgeable, they're invested, and they are absolutely pro-development. They are absolutely pro-downtown code because they were at the table, at the seat. They were at the table, they set the table and worked in partnership with the city to develop this code. So everything that went into this code was thoughtful and yes, intentional, but everyone has spoken to that. What's kind of overlooked here is the fact that the residents are here on the ground, and that it is from their perspective that we must look. From a planning perspective, we're not just talking about where high-rise development, where density is placed. We're also talking about a thoughtful plan from a city's perspective, taking into account the residents' point of view. This isn't academic, this isn't a map on paper, this is about density and development in context with a residential area that is proud and welcoming of developments like this on a typical day.
Thank you, Katrina. Joan Kelchner?
Good morning. I'm Joan Kelchner. I live on Linwood Street. I've lived there since 1984. I would like to point out that the Heather Dukes and the staff continued to mention 1981 as their starting point. 1981, 250-foot height was arbitrarily just splashed up and down Central Avenue as a thought without much real good contextual thought. It was because of that and the freeway that our neighborhood organized and started saying we need to plan appropriately. We need to plan in context. We need to do some things. Historic preservation was our first thing. We got that going. We became historic, and we have worked very hard at that, and we're proud to say that we're one of the reasons why the downtown started to come back again, is we recognized and we introduced the rest of the city to a really nice neighborhood that they could feel safe coming down to. But we also threw ourselves into multiple other plans. We're the reason why there are a lot of downtown plans. And we have looked at each and every site in context, separately, to make sure that everything was fitting well and that we were looking at density, and we were looking at the future for light rail, and we were looking at the future for our cultural resources, the library and the art museum, neither of which are very tall and would be overwhelmed by immediately adjacent height. We have looked at everything in that context, and in the context of this lot, it's barely over half an acre. It is immediately adjacent to already built environment, things that people already want to look at. That includes historic on the west, the Roosevelt Historic Neighborhood, and it includes the spaghetti factory. And I will tell you, Mike Poulos, who owns the spaghetti factory land and works with the spaghetti factory company, he was part of the family when it was first built, before he became divorced, but he really works with them very closely. Is adamant that he is not going anywhere. He didn't know that there was a 250-foot height arbitrarily put on him. He thought he was already historic. I will tell you that he is going to be historic. The spaghetti factory is in the process now of being added back in as an historic resource, as a contributing member to the Roosevelt Historic Neighborhood. So that lot's not available for any kind of aggregation or assemblage. Neither is the artisan lofts, neither is anything else in the neighborhood. So I would ask you to consider what we did when we negotiated that 75-foot height, was we looked at this lot in context, and 75 feet is enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I don't know who's next. It's either Andy or Timothy. Which one is going next? Okay, go. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Andy Abkarian. I'm president of the Roosevelt Action Association, and I live on Linwood Street. Just to give some context, the Roosevelt Action Association is a 501(c) that was founded 36 years ago to protect and promote the interests from McDowell Road down to Van Buren and from Central Avenue to 7th Avenue. This parcel is in Roosevelt. This parcel is not in the warehouse district. This parcel is not on Roosevelt Road. This parcel is not in the Evans-Churchill neighborhood. So while there are tremendous interests by a variety of different folks, this parcel is in Roosevelt. And by way of perspective, I mean, this has been mentioned a little bit already by some of the folks, but the current board of RAA has combined over 100 years of experience and background working with the city, working with developers and downtown stakeholders. And we're very proud to maintain a very long-standing reputation as being pro-growth and with city revitalization efforts. One of the projects that RAA is most proud of is their participation in the downtown code. And not to brag, but I was appointed to the original project that was the downtown Phoenix code, the visioning for the strategic plan in 2005 by Mayor Gordon. So one of the things that I think is important to understand, and this is brought up a little bit and I don't want to repeat, so I will just summarize, is that the characterization of the 75-foot height on the parcel as inconsistent with the goals of the downtown code, light rail, TOD, or being the result of one planning document with an approved site plan is understandable, but it is faulty. The plat that exists now that we're talking about has double the density of the existing phase, and it was approved 5 years after the light rail, the city had started to purchase light rail plans. So there has been some discussion that this project and this zoning was not made at the time of light rail, but it was taken into consideration. There's also been discussion that this height is a compromise of sorts, and that the height has been decreased by 30%. But keep in mind that this is not a height decrease. This is a height increase, and it was intentional. And we also heard the applicant and the speakers talk about the density of the project, and that's what's important. And really, the feet on the street are really only limited by a developer's creativity in terms of bringing the maximum number of units to that site. There are a couple things that were brought up that that'll take me a second to pull out, but in terms of intentionality, the items that the current project form comports with are TOD elements as a medium urban center that actually has 8 stories of height. The Roosevelt Special Planning District, which actually shows that the height on the land in the 80s was a C2 and did not have a high-rise incentive on it. The Phoenix Downtown Redevelopment Plan that was signed as an addendum in 2000, just as early as 2013, as an addendum and a deed restriction. The Downtown Vision Blueprint for the Future, the Downtown Plan, the urban form plan. So this is not the general plan. This is the downtown code, and the city did not give up any previous rights to high quality or a vibrant project or a tax base that the city doesn't have now and needs to be restored. That's not the case. The reason why those properties were zoned at 250 feet, I mean, the basic principle of the code was to align and be that there were no Prop 207 issues. So when there's discussion about Muse to the north and Spaghetti Factory, the reason they were zoned at 250 was because of Prop 207 issues. So, you know, where the subcommittee is being asked is to brush aside this zoning that was ratified by a city council that was legendary for planning efforts, a city that spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and 5 years on community outreach and development. And that code may look like a static document, but it isn't. It provides a building form for any developer to mold to the highest and best use. Some of the standards are inflexible. One of them is height. The rest of it is all based on zoning code. So,
Andy, you're at 5
yep.
minutes.
Oh, am I?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I can talk a lot. I'm from New York,
yeah,
so.
so you're at 5 minutes.
Okay.
So thank you.
All right. So there's one last comment I want to make is that this isn't an opportunity to deny anything. This is taking a stand in support of a long-term document and a long-term plan. So thank you very much.
you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Timothy Lasota for Roosevelt Action Association.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. I am Timothy Lasota, 2198 East Camelback Road, here on behalf of the Roosevelt Action Association. So I just want to cover a few things in a little bit more detail. To the neighborhood, this looks like a bait and switch. The property is given the additional density. In 2001, it's given the concessions on setback, and those are given, and then here we are years later, and the height restrictions that they'd agreed to in exchange for those, they try to get this committee and the council to negate. So I know it wasn't the original owner. This is a new owner, and they weren't involved in that case, but that's what it looks like to the neighborhood, and that's the condition that the property was bought under. The current zoning or map, whatever you want to call it, the buyer bought it knowing exactly what the height limitation was. There's a phrase for this type of a buyer that the Arizona courts use, and it's called the, quote, gambling buyer. That's a direct quote. And it means that the person buys it hoping they can rezone and makes a gamble. Well, I would just ask that the council and this subcommittee not pay off that gamble on the backs of the others in the community here who are here in opposition and have adhered to the rules as they are, the 75-foot limitation. If the council and this subcommittee give in to this, the downtown code will be picked apart piece by piece, just as has been testified to. I'd also like to just mention the light rail plan was approved in March of 2000. I know Andy touched on that, but That line right up Central Avenue was approved in 2000. That was well known at the time this was the 2001 plan happened, and certainly was known to the buyer, and construction had to have been well underway because it was originally slated to open in '06, light rail. So one last word, we've asked the city to reconsider our legal protest, which we think is a valid protest. And I've sent a letter to the city and to the members of the subcommittee, but we do have significant opposition. People who have signed the protest letter were essentially being penalized by the density that's been approved and the condominium units that don't yet exist. But we're asking the city council, and I hope they take a good hard look at that, because the neighbors deserve that protest. So thank you.
Thank you. I think it's Christine Laws and Lou Laws. I have a white card available to speak. Did you guys want to speak?
I oppose, and
We need-
defer to the Roosevelt Action Association.
Okay. 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 All right. You oppose. Two oppose. Those are all the cards. Councilman Nowakowski, I'm putting it in your hands since it's your district.
Thank you so much. So, Alan, we heard over and over again that this might be a violation of Prop 207, and that's why we actually allocated 250 zoning in that area. Is that true or not, or was that before Prop 207? Or
So, Councilman Okowski, Madam Chair, I would take us back first to 1981. And so what the City Council did in 1981 was look at the Central Avenue corridor where we had some high-rise already granted and made a link between downtown and some of the high-rise stuff in uptown. And so in order to incentivize development of that area, what the city wanted to see to reflect the long-time plans that have been on the books since the 60s about intensifying Central Avenue, the city went through and did a HRI case, which is high-rise incentive, and that's what gave the 250 feet. So there was broad discussion in the 80s about this. The council at that time said, we want to link uptown and downtown. Central Avenue is our corridor. We want zoning in place to incentivize people to build high-rise development. And so that was when the 250 feet was put into place. When the applicant came in for Artisan Lofts, the HRI designation gave additional height, but it did not give additional density in terms of dwelling units to fill all of that building. So rather than do a mixed-use building, they wanted to do just a residential building. And so they came in and through their discussion, they downzoned the height, but got additional density to make their project work because it was a residential project. And so as part of that agreed upon compromise, that was prior to Prop 207, but there was no 207 issue because it was done as part of a zoning. They were asking for something, and in exchange, they agreed to a set of conditions. When the city undertook the downtown code zoning process, we went through, again, another public process, and what we had to do at that point, because Prop 207 was the law in Arizona, was make sure that we gave building heights that represented what existing entitlements were. So because of that 1981 case where we gave HRI zoning up there, we then, through the downtown code, gave the 250 feet to those other buildings around there because that was respecting their property right that had the 250 feet in height. This subject site only got to 75 feet because that was representing the compromise height that they had reached as part of that case. So there's no Prop 207 issue with this particular case. The applicant, requested, as I said, originally the 250, but the step-back versions, council could approve any of those if they desired, or not approve the case as well.
Alan, the protest, it was denied on what basis?
So, Chairman, Madam Chair, and Councilman Nowakowski, the protest, as you know, there was a change in state statute a couple years ago relative to three-quarter vote. And initially, when they came in, staff did believe that they met it, but then went back after some further analysis, and the subject site does have a condo plat on it, and so it plats those individual units. And under the new state statute, those units count. Even though they're not occupied units, they count under the state statute. Mr. Lasota sent us a letter that he referenced late yesterday challenging that. We provided that to the law department, and they're looking at it, and we will anticipate having an answer for the council by the time this gets to the full council.
And if I can talk to the developer, please, if they can come up here. So in our presentation, you actually have a couple drawings here. You have a drawing where you have a 70 feet builder's height between the buildings, I guess it is, or is it 50 feet of draining. Then you have 40 feet building height. Then you go up to 105, 200, and 250. That was the proposed one. Then you have a current proposed plan that has, you keep the 50 feet of draining area and open space. Then you have, you continue with the 40 feet. Then you go to 150 to 180. Can you tell me how you came up with that? Was that community involvement or?
Sure. We first had a meeting with RAA. I don't remember the date exactly. The first meeting we had, we proposed the initial plan, which was to go to 250. And at that point, after the meeting, we heard we heard basically their point of view, and we thought that a way to help them was going to be to do a step-back process in which their views will not be negatively affected as to having a 250 feet height building in front of them. So we thought it was a good mechanism, and actually it is technically, from a view perspective, if you have a 40 foot high building in front of you and then it goes up, your views are not going to be as affected, or we thought that was our thought process, and that's what we presented.
Okay, thank you. And somebody from the community, if you want to respond, if you'd like to respond to that, because I'd like to figure out, did you all have a conversation and did you work something out or try to, or was he working in good faith or not?
Yeah, no, you can go. It's just I had another question. Go ahead.
As much as he'd like to portray the fact that he did have conversations with the Roosevelt Action Association. They showed up at a meeting. They said, "Here's my plan." Well, wait, sorry. I'm going to put in a 250-foot limit. I have no plan. I don't know what I'm going to build. I just want height. We said no. They said, all right, well, we're going to run through the process. They've continued through the process. It wasn't until the time when we actually went to the first planning commission, or just before that, that I happened to call the planning department and point out that they couldn't build a 250-foot building on that lot. It doesn't have enough length to do the step that they were saying and still get to the height. So I then, so then right after that, they went ahead and refiled, didn't change any of the signage, didn't talk to us until the day of actually coming to the planning commission, that the central city, that then it changed. So it really wasn't any negotiation, any talk. It was just based on feedback to the planning department that they really couldn't build it on that property. And when you look at the property, you can't get to that height and have any kind of really building out to the front of it. Their map is a little bit wrong. They actually extend the view, so it looks like they've got more room at 180 feet. It actually extends out into Central Avenue, which they can't build on, so.
Okay.
Other questions? Sorry.
No, Councilman, you asked for the developer to come up here. He is here. He answered your questions. You asked the neighborhood to answer your questions. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. How would you like to proceed, or would you like to continue this?
You know, at this moment that there seems to be a split group of individuals, I think we need to continue this. I would like to sit down with the neighborhood and the developer to kind of try to figure out if there is a happy medium or not. And if there is, then we can bring this back on November, is it 6th?
6th.
To see if we came up with some kind of a happy medium or not.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. I will agree with that only because there's a legal protest, a challenge on the legal protest, and I would like to find out. Yes.
I just had a quick question about timing. So if we continue it, is the city council hearing then going to be continued as well? Okay, thank you.
There's a motion, there's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will see you back November 6th. I thought we were going to be able to get this through by in September, be able to vote, but here we go, November 6th. So we'll see you then. And I have no cards to call to the public. Future agenda items. Anybody? All right.
You're all good.
Adjourn.